Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about how to legally start your business. I know, it's so exciting. I'm just kidding. No, I'm excited because, well, it's Wednesday. Yeah, you made it this far through the week. And you know what? You've made it through 100% of your days thus far. So I'm sure you can make it through the next one as well. So the reason why this is important is because there's a lot of ways you can start a business. And simple, and we've talked about this before, very simply, you start exchanging goods for money or services for money. That's as simple as it takes. But if you want to do it legal and you want to do it right, it's a little bit more complex than that. And we're going to share with you today the things that you need to think about on how to start that business legally. Okay, because this isn't just a nuts and a bolts. This is about thinking beyond the moment type strategy. So let's get started, shall we? So, congratulations. You have decided to start a business. That is awesome. You are in for an amazing, wild ride, if you will. Ups, downs, rounds, throughs, so many things, so many exciting things. And the journey is going to be amazing for you, okay? It will be both scary and sad some days, and then there's so much a range of emotion that you're going to be going through. So I want you to prepare for that. Like if you're seriously legitimately thinking of starting a business and you're like just wanting to be pushed over the edge to do it from that comfort zone you've been sitting in, this video, what we're going to be talking about today, is going to give you those tools and those thought processes to help you get into that mode, to start thinking like an entrepreneur and a business owner rather than like an employee. Because up until now, most of what you've been told applies to being an employee. Do your job. Do your best at your job. Don't do anything more than your job. You know, it's a very limited mindset. But if you're embarking upon this entrepreneurship journey, you're going to want to change your mindset from what am I supposed to do to how, okay? There's also another one that talks about who, not how. Who can help me achieve my goals? Who can give me the tools that I need to be successful, okay? Because it's not going to be all you forever, right? So before we start that, I need you to take that switch and just go and just put that in your brain and go, hey, I need to start thinking like a business owner and not like an employee, all right? So the first thing that you should be thinking about if you're going to be starting a business is, what do you want to name it? I know you're like, well, that's easy. I want to name it this. Well, that might be true for some of you, but for a lot of you, you might not know. And some of these things that we're going to talk about, you might not have even thought of, okay? I see this all the time. I work with entrepreneurs and business owners all the time to help them with their business. And this is probably one of the most important decisions you can make. And we'll talk about those reasons why. So first, do you want it to be a brand name, right? Brand name is something like Apple or Nike or Reebok. And we're going to use those in another example here shortly, okay? But those are brand names because Nike doesn't mean anything, okay? I mean, as far as like, I'm sure there's a meaning for it, but I'm saying like for a business, you associate it with clothes and just do it and all of these different things, which is great, but it's not a person's name. And contrast that with, like, for instance, Joe's Plumbing, okay? It has your name in it, so it's easy. And it also has plumbing in it, which is easy for people to know you're a plumber, right? So the problem with your name and electrician or anything after that is that the business is solely dependent upon your name to exist. Okay. That's a problem if you decide to sell it at some point in your lifetime, right? Or if you just want to retire and you've built this nest egg and you want it to be more than just that nest egg. Okay. So that's why it's so important that you think about these things first, right? Are you going to pass it on to your kids? Are you hoping they'll join you in the business? Or are you looking to build something and then sell it? Okay. So your name is very important. And the next reason is probably the most important reason why, because of trademarks. If you think of Nike, you think of Reebok, they don't mean anything, as I said before, in context of there is a meaning to them. But for a trademark purpose, the more abstract, not relevant to your brand, or not relevant to a particular product, the stronger the trademark protection. Because John or Joe's Plumbing is not only impossible to trademark, it just is, right? So you're going to want to pick something that is easy to trademark or easier to trademark, because trademarks can be a pain no matter what you do. But point is that Nike is a better idea than even Apple, okay? Because theoretically, Apple, that means something, right? You think fruit versus Nike, you think the clothing, you think the brand, you think the just do it, that type of thing. So these are the strategic decisions that you're going to want to make as you're deciding on how to start your business, because it's not just as simple of starting. But one of the things that I see a lot with a lot of entrepreneurs is that they don't have a strategy. They don't think through these beginning steps. They get their logo in mind, which is all exciting, and they get their colors, which is even more exciting, and they get pick out their font, but they kind of drop the ball on the naming thing. I know that sounds funny, but you're like, really? That's the problem? It kind of is, because they're not thinking about these next steps, right? They're not thinking about whether they're going to sell the business, whether they're going to want to trademark. They're just thinking about the immediate, I want to start a business. And so if you take 5 minutes and sit down and think about what is your end goal, remember I've talked about this in several videos, but beginning with the end in mind, what's your end goal? Then it makes it a lot simpler to start making decisions for names, right? And they actually have business name generators out there. So if you're stuck and you're like, I kind of want to, I don't know what I'm doing, look into those. They have them all over, and they will take a word, and those are always good to do. And they'll take a word and they'll put other words that complement it around it so that you can pick a better name. For instance, that's how I got the name of the podcast, Tactical Startup, right? And there's a juxtaposition there. Tactical, you think of like military and weapons and police and stuff like that. And startup is business. So there's a strategy to it, right? And there's lots of different names you can name things. So keep those types of things in mind, is that the meaning behind your name can be very important, okay? The next thing, what are your goals with your business? Is it to be a small business and to just generate income for yourself? And there's nothing wrong with that. Or is it to be a growth business with becoming a startup? We talked about that in yesterday's video. So these types of things can affect what type of business entity you want to pick. If you're going to be a small business, you probably, depending on your state and local laws and area, you probably don't need to be a corporation. Again, always seek legal counsel. Don't take what I'm saying for gospel truth, because your state may be different. But if you're planning on being a growth company, right, then you're probably going to want to be a corporation, because corporations with stock, and it's easier to get corporations in that respect as a growth company for stock purposes. You can sort of get investors with LLCs, but because corporations are what they know, then you kind of got to be careful, because you want to be as enticing to investors as possible. Okay. So that brings you to the next one, LLC or corporation. What's your pick, right? I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The liability shield that goes with an LLC and a corporation are virtually identical. I know, it's crazy. And I say that because people get that wrong all the time. I want a corporation because it's better. No, not necessarily. Or I want an LLC because that's what they have, da. And people get their advice from the internet, which is not bad sometimes, but for the most part, Google really is not your friend when it comes to making complex decisions, right? We're not talking about simple decisions. A simple decision has you ask a question, you get an answer. That's what Google knows. Google doesn't know the things that I'm talking about here. Google doesn't know that an LLC is perfectly fine unless you're planning on getting investors, right? So this type of logic is why Google is great for some things, but terrible for others. Don't get your legal advice from Google. But it's a good place to kind of like get your feet wet, to know what you're talking about, to understand certain things, because they can answer questions really, really well. So you're going to want to decide between that LLC and corporation. There is no one perfect entity for each business. So don't think that you have to pick one over the other in most instances. And for most reasons, an LLC is better than a corporation. And I'm going to let you watch some of my LLC videos to learn about those, the reasons why LLCs can be better. Now, here comes the kind of the how-to part. In the state of California, this is very important. Every state has their own little nuances and difficulties, and so don't take this for gospel if you're in New Jersey or Phoenix or wherever you're at. So you're going to want to do a little bit of research on the state formation website, the company formation website. That could be the Secretary of State, as it is in California. It could be a completely different entity. It's typically the Secretary of State. That's the place where you're going to start. To get that LLC or the corporation, it's simply filing paperwork with the Secretary of State or that government entity. It is not an involved process. They've improved it greatly over the years. It used to be literally you'd have to send in paper copies to the Secretary of State and then get them back, and then you could start from there. And it was a very time-consuming, difficult process. It's not that way anymore. It's really quite simple. If you know how to use a computer, you can do an LLC, articles of organization, or articles of incorporation for a corporation. The problem is they can't advise you on what to do, and so you may want to seek legal help for that, for what to do, right? Like you could do the physical part of it, but you might not know what a registered agent is, or that, for instance, in California, you can't have a P.O. box as your address. You have to have a physical address because you have to have someone that can serve you documents, legal documents. And so there has to be a person who's over the age of 18 that can accept documents on behalf of the company. So you can't have a P.O. box. People try it and they won't allow it. And so that's the type of thing that you need to be aware of as that. And that's why I'm saying seek legal counsel, even if you're unsure, because I've seen people do that wrong and it ended up badly for them. Okay. So that's what it takes to get started, filing those simple documents with the Secretary of State. Then in California, and this is kind of one of those little annoying things, because not only do you have to file your articles in California, but you also have to do what's called a statement of information. Statement of information is rather simple. It is simply outlining the owners and the operators of the business. Again, not terribly difficult. In my opinion, it's an extra $20 and it's obnoxious because it is $20 in California. Other states, it may be free, it may be nothing. I don't know. But to me, it's just an extra power money grab because it's a stupid form that they could have done differently. And I don't like it, but it's required by the state. Now, that's what you need to get started from the Secretary of State. However, and this is the big however, and this is the one issue if you haven't paid attention to anything else, or if you have paid attention to other things, and you're just like, well, come on, I don't want to deal with this or whatnot. This is where hiring an attorney to do it right for you is so very important, because this next step is what gets people in trouble the most. And that's not doing the required legal paperwork after the fact. This stuff doesn't get filed with the Secretary of State, not in California, but it's required nonetheless. And so you need, in California, an LLC operating agreement. It's required by law. It's not an option. But if you don't go through the proper steps, or you don't go through an attorney, you're still held liable for that purpose. So having that operating agreement isn't just good advice, right? I prepare those for my clients, so you don't have to. That's the point. That's why you hire an attorney for that. If you don't know it and don't want to deal with it, don't try to do it yourself. It's like I take my car to a mechanic for them to work on the vehicle, right? Because I'm not a mechanic. I don't go to a doctor and I try to operate on myself, right? That just doesn't make sense. Not only is my time better used doing almost any other thing in the whole wide world, but I don't know how to operate on myself. I don't know how to do plumbing. I don't know how, I mean, I could get by with some basic stuff, but when it starts getting into this complex realm of what you need for documents and corporations and stuff, that's when you really need to hire a professional. That being said, you do not have to hire a professional, okay? Don't mistake what I'm recommending versus what's required. Do you need the legal paperwork? Yes, you do. Do you have to hire an attorney to do it? No, you do not, okay? But again, if you're messing with anything under the hood of a car, you should get an instruction manual at the very minimum, or hire a mechanic to do the car, right? In this instance, hire the attorney. Save yourself the trouble. Save yourself the headache. I enjoy this stuff. I love looking through the documents and doing all of these things for my clients. So for me, I enjoy that. You go do what you enjoy. Don't have us. Don't do it yourself when you could have someone else that does it all the time and watches out for these things. That's what it's about, is knowing when to pull in these advisors. So that's it. That's as simple as it gets. That's how you start to legally start a business. Now, again, your state may be different, so please keep that in mind. That's why another part of consulting an attorney makes a ton of sense, because if you're not in California, then you may have different requirements. You may not even be required to have an operating agreement. There might not even be a statement of information. So it's very important that you're speaking with local counsel to you. On that note, the law has not caught up with our global economy yet, or even our national economy yet. So a lot of this stuff is older in that respect. And so the laws are different from location to location. So just because I'm talking about California, it isn't that I'm trying to obfuscate. It's very simple that they're just different. The laws in Illinois are very different than California, or might be. So keep that in mind. If you've gotten value out of this video, don't forget to subscribe and like. We go live Monday through Friday, except for holidays and the occasional I have to do other work, but stop in to get your questions answered. I'd love to help you, and we'll see you later. Have a good one. Take care. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell icon. Yeah.